I am gonna let you in on a secret that is going to dramatically improve your landscape photography in just about 3 minutes. So let's get into it. This is a little known secret because, well, it's not really a secret at all. It's actually pretty obvious once you see it, but the secret will help you take your landscape photography from this to this to this. And in fact, some of the world's most famous landscape photographs wouldn't be nearly as good if they didn't include this one simple element. So, what is the secret? Negative space, that's it. But no, seriously, that's it. It's negative space. The spaces between branches and foliage, negative space, offer visual breathing room that can enhance the depth, the clarity, and even the tranquility of a scene. Notice how much more tranquil this image seems with the negative space than without. But it's not as simple as just finding open space and taking a photo. It takes patience and planning and understanding of light and composition to make use of negative space in your photos. And in this video, I'll show you how. I recently spent a few days in Great Smoky Mountains National Park in search of waterfalls, and along the way found plenty of opportunities to use negative space to improve my compositions. Like in this scene, for example, I could have easily gotten down on the ground and included the whole waterfall in the frame, but by backing up and including only part of the falls, allowing the top and bottom to be outside the frame, I was able to emphasize the height of the falls and create a more interesting composition with negative space surrounding the subject. Negative space can add balance to an otherwise unbalanced composition, like in this scene. The vertical lines of the rock formations draw your eye toward the top right corner of the frame, which is empty. By moving farther back, I was able to include more of the rocks and water in the scene, creating more of a balanced composition. In fact, negative space can be used to create balance in any type of composition. In this scene, for example, I could have easily centered the tree, but by placing the tree off to the side and using negative space on the other side, I created a more interesting composition. And when it comes to trees, negative space can be especially helpful when trying to convey the size and majesty of the subject. In this scene, for example, I could have included the whole tree in the frame, but by placing the camera farther away and using negative space around the tree, I was able to emphasize the size of the tree and make it appear more majestic. And it's not just trees. Using negative space can help you emphasize the size and scale of any subject. In this scene, for example, I could have included the whole lighthouse in the frame, but by placing the camera farther away and including only part of the lighthouse, I was able to emphasize the size of the lighthouse and make it appear more imposing. But maybe you're thinking, why would I ever want to include empty space in my photos? Isn't it better to always try to fill the frame? Not necessarily. Including empty space in your photos can actually help you create more interesting compositions. For example, in this scene, I could have tried to fill the frame with as much rock as possible, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more interesting composition that draws the viewer's eye to the center of the frame where the rocks are converging. In this scene, I could have included more of the forest in the background, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more mysterious and atmospheric composition. And here's another example. I could have included more of the mountains in the background, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more dramatic and impactful composition. And when it comes to creating atmosphere in your photos, negative space is especially helpful. For example, in this scene, I could have included more of the lake in the foreground, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more mysterious and atmospheric composition. And here's another example. I could have included more of the fog in the background, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more dramatic and impactful composition. But wait, there's more. Negative space can also be used to create a sense of depth in your photos. For example, in this scene, I could have included more of the road in the foreground, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more atmospheric composition that gives the impression of depth. In this scene, I could have included more of the mountain in the background, but by leaving some empty space in the frame, I was able to create a more dramatic and impactful composition that gives the impression of depth. But maybe you're thinking, how do I know when to include negative space in my photos? Well, that's where patience comes in. Sometimes you have to wait for the perfect conditions to capture the shot you want. For example, in this scene, I wanted to capture the feeling of mist rising off the lake. To do that, I had to wait for the morning fog to burn off just enough to reveal the mountains in the background. Once I saw the perfect amount of negative space between the fog and the mountains, I snapped the photo. Here's another example. In this scene, I wanted to capture the feeling of tall, stately trees. To do that, I had to find a location where the trees were far enough apart to create negative space around each tree. Once I found the perfect spot, I waited for the golden hour light to create the most dramatic look. And finally, here's one more example. In this scene, I wanted to capture the feeling of a lone hiker on a misty mountain trail. To do that, I had to wait for the perfect combination of fog, mist, and light. Once I saw the perfect amount of negative space around the hiker, I snapped the photo. But I think you're still not convinced. You're thinking, okay, negative space is great, but what if there's no negative space in the scene I'm photographing? What then? Well, in that case, you'll have to be more creative. For example, in this scene, there wasn't much negative space between the branches. So I decided to move closer to the tree and use the branches to create negative space within the frame. In this scene, I couldn't find any negative space between the branches. So I decided to move farther away from the tree and use the negative space around the tree to create balance in the composition. And in this scene, I couldn't find any negative space anywhere. So I decided to create my own by moving closer to the flowers and including only some of them in the frame. As you can see, negative space can be used in a variety of ways to create a variety of effects. It's important to experiment and find what works best for you and your style of photography. And if you're looking for more inspiration, there's no better place to find it than in the work of other photographers. I encourage you to go out and explore your own negative space and let me know what you come up with. And hey, if you got anything at all out of this video, please give it a like. And consider subscribing because why not? It's free and you won't miss out on future tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time. Now check out these videos and get out there and start shooting.